Morning, guys. Today we're going to be working on reading comprehension. So we're going to read a passage and we're going to work on our vocabulary skills. We're going to look at our vocabulary first. We're going to review the words so that we understand what they mean before we see them. Then we're going to practice reading. And as we read, we're going to make sure that we understand, and we're going to stop and take breaks to summarize. Ready to go? Awesome. So make sure that you've logged into Canvas, and after you've logged into Canvas, I need you to go ahead and click on April 20th through April 24th. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and flip my screen. Boom. Pull you back out a little bit. Okay, so when you click on the Canvas link, this is what you should see. This is Mr. Smith's computer. Now, I'm going to go ahead and click on Scholastic on the link here. Here's our goal. We're going to read and decode, and then I'm going to click here. And it's going to say, okay, so this is what we're trying to read today. People call me crazy. Now remember, if you need to log in, you can log in using Knox Knights, right? So I'm going to log out just real quick to show you how to do that. And I'm going to click back here. Here's the link, and it's going to pop up and say, hey, log in. Okay, cool. I am a student. And then from there, type in KNOXKNIGHTS, hit enter, and it'll send you straight to the story People Call Me Crazy by Gary Paulsen. Now, what I want to do first is I want to review the vocabulary. So these blue words, they're blue because that's our vocabulary, and what they've done so kindly is to go ahead and tell us the definitions of the words. Current, a continuous movement of water in the same direction. So we're going to talk about this guy is in a current, so the movement of the water. Next, exertion. Practice saying exertion. This is a lot of physical or mental work. So a lot of work like, reading this passage or possibly playing soccer. Next, the word is trampled, stepped on or crushed. So like these kids are trampling the sandcastle. Relentlessly. Relentlessly. Try saying that one. Relentlessly. It means without stopping. My baby brother has been crying relentlessly, and I think my dad is going crazy. Relentlessly. Yes, my children are relentlessly playing. Adrenaline. This is a chemical produced by your body when you're excited or frightened or angry. It gives you extra energy. So a lot of the times whenever we get scared, we have an adrenaline rush. Cool? Let's move on to the passage. So I'm going to click X here. All right. People call me crazy. So we're going to start reading now. Part 1. I call it having a sense of adventure, but it hasn't always been that way. I was nervous the moment I stepped off the bus at Camp Lakewood. The air was hot, but I was filled with icy cold terror. I was scared. Mom and Dad had signed me up for Camp Lakewood, even though it was the last place I wanted to spend my summer. It wasn't that I didn't like the outdoors. It's just that I hated water, and Camp Lakewood was nothing but water. Not only was the camp next to a lake, but there was also a river running through it. All the activities seemed to be swimming or water skiing or sailing, which is why on the third day of camp, I found myself on a hike. It was on dry land, and that was all I cared about. About 20 of us campers started out in the afternoon. Right away, we came to a bridge. This is a bridge. Over the river. This is a river. Before crossing, our counselor, his name is Bobby, pointed down at the water. Remember, the river is off limits without a counselor, he said. The current is surprisingly strong. The current. I hung back, watching others cross the bridge. Thatcher, this guy Richie from my cabin had turned around. Come on, he said, walking back toward me. I focused on the trees up ahead as we walked over the bridge together. I felt like I was going to throw up with every step. Oh, wow, that was a pretty cool way of saying that he felt nervous. Pause at the video now. Create a quick summary of what happened in part 1. Now that you're done with your summary, let's look at part 2. As the day went on, Richie and I found ourselves falling behind the others. Hold up! Richie said finally, his face watermelon red from the exertion. He pulled out his water bottle and took a drink. So what was up with you and the bridge? Richie asked. After a few moments, he sat down on a rock to take a rest. I shrugged. It's just I used to love the water, but then... Then what? He asked. I took a deep breath. A few summers ago, my older brother's friends dared me to swim underneath this flooding raft. It was dark and I'd never done it before. I got tangled up in the anchor chain underwater and kind of freaked out. My older brother had to jump in and save me. Richie nodded in a way that made me feel like maybe I wasn't such a loser. After that, I just couldn't go in the water anymore. Honestly, I think my parents picked Camp Lakewood to help me get over it. Take a moment and summarize what exactly was happening here. Part 3. Suddenly, Richie jumped up. Where's the group? I looked up the path. We must have lost track of time because everyone was gone. They can't be that far, I said. We hurried ahead until we came to a fork in the trail. Uh-oh, time to make a decision. Wonder what's going to happen. Richie and I looked at each other. I think the ground looks more more walked on, to the right, I said. Richie nodded and we headed that way. Minutes went by, or was it hours? Everything looked the same. The bushes, the trees, the bends, and the trail. The bend is where it turns. I think we picked the wrong direction, Richie said. So we turned around and went back until we came to another fork, a different one. Neither of us remembered seeing it before. We stood there frustrated and confused. I think we need to keep going left to retrace our steps, I said. You were wrong the last time, Richie snapped. Then he pulled out his water bottle only to find that it was empty. All right, take a moment here, pause this video, go back and just summarize what happened in part 3. What was the problem that they're facing? What are they going to do to solve it? And did their solution really work? Part 4. Richie and I hadn't known each other long enough to trust each other yet, and neither one of us was familiar with the camp or the woods. Panic started to set in. Listen, Richie shouted. Do you hear that? It's the river. He sped down a steep hill. And I followed slowly. By the time I caught up, he was studying the water. All we have to do is cross it, Richie shouted over the river's roar. Man, that's a lot of sound. But swimming probably isn't a great idea. Remember what Bobby said about the current? He added, earning buddy points in my mind. I was about to suggest getting back on the trail, but it was starting to get dark. I knew we only had a little daylight left before we'd be stuck in the woods overnight. Suddenly, Richie started yelling, Look, look, look! He pointed upstream. A fallen tree reached across the river about 6 feet above the water. We can walk on that, he said. That's when Richie lost every buddy point he ever had with me. Can't we just keep following the river until we find the bridge we crossed before? I suggested. Richie either didn't hear me or ignored me. Then he hopped up onto the fallen tree and started to walk across. So I want you to pause now, your video, and summarize what is the problem inside our character. What's happening? All right, let's do part 5. My heart pounded as I watched him. Richie took each step slowly, with his eyes on his feet. At the halfway point, he looked back at me and flashed a thumbs up. And that's when he slipped. I watched him fall into the river like it was in slow motion. Then the current quickly swept him a few feet downstream. He was stopped when his shirt got caught on a low-hanging branch. The water beat at him relentlessly. There's our vocabulary word. Remember, never stopping. Filling his mouth. Oh no. Richie, I yelled, take off the shirt and kick to the shore. You're only a few feet away. But he couldn't hear me over the sound of the water. If he couldn't get free soon, the current would suck him under. Without another thought, I jumped in the water. I kicked my way to Richie, fueled by adrenaline. Grab hold of me, I shouted. Richie gripped my belt and yanked his shirt free. Somehow I managed to push us toward the shallow waters, but I was fighting the current. My strength was slipping away, and just when I thought the river would win, I felt my toe touch on something. We were close enough to the water's edge to stand. I pulled Richie up. We were both shaking as we climbed out of the river. My heart was pounding, but it wasn't from fear. You're crazy, Richie said, coughing up a mouthful of water. I patted him on the back. I mean, thank you, he said. Come on, I said. Let's go back to camp. It's been many years since that day in the river, but I still think about it. I think about it when I'm dangling from a helicopter like this guy, being lowered into rough waters. I think about it as I swim out toward the victim. I think about it when I feel a sudden rush of fear. Everyone who works in search and rescue has a story about why they do what they do. People tell us we're crazy all the time, but that's not the way I see it. Okay, guys, so that's going to conclude our reading. Please make sure that you're reading along and practicing your read aloud skills. See you soon. Bye, guys.